Tonight, we're opening a file. It's a chilling collection of documents known as the Larson evidence. This is a forensic dive into some very serious claims about covert neural technology. We're going to look at the alleged hardware, the actual patents that might explain it, and what all of this means for the freedom of our own minds. And it all starts right here with this one image. What you're looking at, next to that penny, is a tiny object, smaller than a millimeter, that was supposedly surgically recovered from a person's body. This single, unsettling piece of evidence is our jumping-off point.
You see something like this, and it forces you to ask a pretty radical question. What if the physical proof for a hidden, invisible conflict has been right under our noses this whole time? So let's follow the evidence presented in these documents and see just how deep this rabbit hole goes.
Okay, let's start with the tangible stuff, the physical hardware. The central claim in what's called the Larson report is that these submillimeter devices were surgically pulled from the body of the author himself, David A. Larson. Here are some microscopic close-ups of those samples. The documents call them bions, which stands for bionic neuron microstimulators. And if you look closely, you can see these structured, clearly non-biological components that seem to be embedded right inside human tissue. So how do you figure out what these things are actually made of? Well, a scientific technique called energy dispersive spectroscopy, or EDS, was reportedly used. This is pretty standard stuff for determining the chemical makeup of any material. It's a key tool in any kind of forensic analysis. And this is the result. This is the chart that came back from the EDS analysis, which the report says was done at Photometrics Laboratory. Each one of those sharp spikes you see represents a specific chemical element that was detected in the sample. So, what did they find? And this is the crucial part. The analysis detected silicon, chlorine, tin, and aluminum. Now, the source material really hammers this home. These are elements used in making semiconductors. They're not things you just find naturally inside the human body. The argument is, this is proof positive that these objects are synthetic, they're man-made. Okay, so, if they're synthetic, that begs the next question: who built them? This leads us to the next chapter in this investigation: the architects, connecting this physical evidence to actual patents and the people behind them. The documents point a finger at this very specific contract: National Institutes of Health, or NIH, contract number N01NS52325. This seems to link the development of this kind of tech directly to government-funded research. And this right here, this is the visual centerpiece of the whole argument. On the left, you've got a photo of one of the recovered samples. And on the right, that's a technical drawing from a US patent. The report claims they are a perfect match, that the recovered devices line up exactly with patents filed by the researchers who were involved in that NIH contract. The documents name names. We're talking about researchers Joseph Schulman, Gerald Loeb, and Philip Troidock. The funding is traced back to the NIH, with the Alfred E. Mann Foundation also identified as a key player in all of this. But wait a second, a really critical question comes up. How could these tiny little things even work? There's no battery, right? The next part of the investigation gets into this alleged invisible assault, the telemetry grid. And the source material hones in on a very, very specific radio frequency, 224.840 megahertz. The claim is that this is the link, the frequency used to remotely power and talk to these implants. So then the investigation draws a straight line from that frequency to one of the lead researchers. It turns out, if you look in the FCC's public database, the call sign K6BWA, which operates on that exact frequency, is licensed to none other than Joseph Schulman. So let's break down how this network is supposed to work. The idea is these passive implants are just sitting there, waiting to receive a signal. Then, RF signals broadcasted at that 224.840 megahertz frequency hit the device and power it up remotely. From there, a special transmission method called a suspended carrier allows for two-way communication. And this, in theory, would allow someone to both monitor and stimulate neural activity from a distance. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds like something out of a science fiction movie. Is this just one person's claim? Well, the investigation then shifts to external support, bringing in a public official who actually looked into hundreds of similar cases. And his conclusion was pretty stunning. This is James O. Guest, a former Missouri state representative, and, get this, an aerospace engineer. And he's quoted saying,
The US patents I've seen and the victims I have spoken with tells me this is for real.
And this isn't just a random quote. It's backed up with official paperwork. This is Rep. Guest's own letterhead, and he's talking about the case of a man named James Walbert. In it, he states that an implanted foreign device, most likely a microchip, does exist in Mr. Walbert's body. And he says that fact was verified by medical and technical experts. So let's just recap what Representative Guest found. He personally investigated over 300 complaints of electronic harassment. He asserted that in at least one case, a victim had implanted RFID microchips that were verified by doctors and toxicologists. His ultimate conclusion was that this technology is for real, and he actually called the removal of these devices a humanitarian issue. So this entire trail of evidence, from a tiny piece of hardware to US patents to radio frequencies, all the way to letters from a state legislator, it all leads us back to one final really heavy question. If the hardware is real and the patents exist, what is the human cost? And that brings us to the core principle that's really at stake in all of this. Consciousness is not a commodity. Freedom of consciousness is a fundamental human right.